Hello and welcome to the EGX Rezzed developer sessions. Thank you all very much for coming. If you have any questions for these guys at the end of the session, there's a microphone in the center of the room. If you go and queue up, we'll get through as many questions as possible. So yeah, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Creative Assembly.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. We're going to talk about Alien Isolation today. I'm Al Hope, I'm creative lead of the project. For us, Alien Isolation is the Alien game that we've always wanted to play. A game that goes back to the roots of the franchise, that takes you back to Ridley Scott's Haunted House in Space, but with a new character, featuring in a new story, where the main character is very much underpowered and underprepared to face some pretty overwhelming odds. I think when we started out many years ago, it felt like there was an incredible opportunity to make the definitive survival horror game based on the original survival horror. Now in a minute, Gary and John will take you through some of the aspects of how we've gone about creating Alien Isolation. But first I wanted to talk about a little bit about the vision behind the game. Some of the things that are really important to us. And actually I thought possibly one of the most interesting ways of doing that was actually show you what I presented to the team many, many years ago. So Danny Boyle, Oscar-winning movie director, calls Alien Isolation one of the holy trinity of serious sci-fi. The other being Kubrick's 2001, and not the George Clooney Solaris, but that's Solaris, the original. But what does serious sci-fi mean? It means you start slow, you establish the world, the rules of the world, so you understand what's possible, and you introduce the people. It's very much about people. It's not about technology, and I'll touch upon that in a sec. You start to build tension. There's an explosive event, but most of all, it's really, really believable. It's really credible. I think it's Alien is 35 years old this year. And I think we could all watch it now and still get an emotional reaction out of it. Still get scared and still get tense, even though it's a guy in a rubber suit. And I think collectively we're really immune to CG. So it's a kind of testament to the craft and the imagination of the kind of cinematic technique of the filmmakers. So of course one of the things about Alien is it's very much genre defining. So when Duncan Jones makes Moon, he's obviously a fan. You can see that the sort of the production design of Alien is heavily influencing the production design of Moon, even down to the signage. That's from Alien, and I think you can see some of the signage in Moon is very similar. And of course, the exciting thing for the team is that we have the original source. I think games in the franchise have usually looked towards the Jim Cameron Vietnam in space angle, and that's totally cool. There's a really cool experience there. But for us, we wanted to go back to that original first Alien. So you can kind of see if Duncan Jones steals from Ridley Scott, you can kind of see Ridley Scott stealing from Stanley Kubrick. He takes this kind of popular culture view of what it'd be like to live in the future, this kind of 50s and 60s view of the future, and kind of makes it a little more grounded and a little more everyday. So it goes from the really super shiny and kind of optimistic, and it kind of filters it through this slightly disillusioned 70s filter where it's gritty and grimy and really, really grounded and really, really credible. And so although it'd be super cool to be living in this environment where it's highly stylized and very designed and very clean, with cylindrical elevators and people really like egg hats and judo. He kind of takes that sort of view of the future and translates it into something that is much more something that we can really relate to. It's much more something every day. So that when something really extraordinary happens, it kind of it's contained within this world that we already believe in. And of course, like I said earlier, it's not really about technology. The motion tracker, arguably one of the most advanced bits of kit in the film, really just shows you how close you are to death. It actually supports the horror more than the survival. So unlike these guys where the phasers and lasers, and even though these guys are really early adopters of tablet technology, there's no sense in the Nostromo there's a big locker somewhere with a huge gun and that's going to be the answer to your problem. So internally we talked about that being a CRT, not LCD. So we're clunky, chunky, we're push button, it's a bit crappy, it might not work. I think if sort of popular high sci-fi is over here and it's holograms and touchscreens and people in Lycra, then we're kind of at the other end of the spectrum, in our own space down there. So right from the start, we really wanted to get across that we wanted to let the player experience the alien. This isn't any kind of sci-fi bug or insect. We really wanted to re-establish Ridley Scott's Alien as the kind of ultimate killer. Something that was really lethal, believable, and terrifying. What's he doing there? And Gary's going to talk to that in a little minute. So this rather clumsy analogy is kind of shows our approach. So this character is famous for being on screen for an entire feature film for about 14 minutes. But the point is, once you've been introduced to him, he kind of lives with you. He doesn't need to be on screen for you to be kind of scared about him, to be thinking about him, about anticipating what he's going to do next. I could have thrown up a picture of a shark, and Jaws is the same. Once you understand what the shark's capable of, it doesn't need to be on screen for you for it to live with you and for you to be fearing it. And lastly, I think within the franchise there's a real scope for the bloody and the gory, but I think Alien's much more about the kind of thematic horror, really getting inside the player's head and misdirection, and the sort of sense of constant dread, so that when they're entering a space, they start to project their worst fears into the world themselves. All right, so I'm going to hand over to John, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the world of Alien Isolation.
Thank you. So I'd like to talk about the art approach that we've taken, this lo-fi sci-fi, which you might have kind of seen us talking about. So first off, lo-fi sci-fi it's a term that sums up the kind of architectural look and feel of the first film, of the Nostromo. We've got, as Al said, very kind of clunky, chunky buttons. Old CRT monitors with really dodgy refresh rates. It's very, very tangible. And so we had this kind of initial problem, which was the film is, it's set over maybe 4 or 5 different sets on the ship. And we had the problem of trying to expand on that to a much bigger place for the player to explore, but still kind of remain authentic to the film, give people something new to look at that still feels old. So we had a couple of, different ways of approaching that, and one of them was to produce our concept art in the same style as the concept artist did for the original film. So here we've got some of Ron Cobb's work, which is very architectural, very felt tip lines and pastel colors, and we brought that through to our own concepts, which the idea would be that if we could understand their process, we could understand where they would go with some of the things that we had to do, the new spaces we had to create. It's kind of like, what would they do? If we look at some more, we've got some color schemes, these mustards and pale blue tones that you just don't see in sci-fi these days. We're kind of pulling that back out from the 70s into the present. So once we've got these kind of concepts in place for the different parts of the Sevastopol, we create archetypes. And these are basically style guides and visual language that we use to kind of populate the rest of the station. So we took the sets that were in the film, and there was maybe 4 or 5 of them, and we dissected them down to the very nuts and bolts of each area. What materials were used, what lighting techniques were used, and used this to create our style guides. Fox were amazing. They gave us kind of 3 terabytes of behind-the-scenes photos and blueprints of the original sets, stuff that would really allow us to see exactly how these were built, not just how they appeared on screen, but what were they made of and how were they lit. So here's some examples of one of these archetypes, the engineering one. We've got some stills from the film on the left-hand side, our kind of target image. Along the top, we've got some concepts, 3D concepts, and then the large image there is a still from the game. And we're really kind of, we're really nailing that aesthetic. Another part you would have seen if you've played the demo out in the hall. This area, again, it's a new space that's not in the film, but it feels very iconic. It feels like it's part of the Nostromo and part of that set. We also take this approach through to the tools as well that the player has. Again, in the demo, you've seen the motion tracker and the hacking tool. So this isn't the motion tracker that they used in the first film. This is a new one. The one in the film was created by Ash at the time. So we've got a new tracker, but again, we've kept the style guide, similar to the old one on the left, we've got the ice cube trays stuck on the side and this kind of kit-bashed approach that the prop designers in the 70s would have. And even things like the hacking tool was kind of inspired from lo-fi elements and retro stuff from the 70s. And in fact, we would only reference objects that were created before 1979, so that we were drawing from the same pool of reference that the guys who worked in the film were. Another aspect of the film that we've brought through to the game is the VHS style. There's a couple of points within the film where you see the film filtered through this kind of first stages of home video. And we've taken that and also the kind of software that would drive those systems, that kind of, at that point in time, and used that to create a style for the UI. So when you look at the map screen or the kind of the sparse HUD elements you've got, it kind of feels like it's been through this old video technology. And one of the ways we did that, we spent a lot of time trying to work out how to make things feel old and, a bit rubbish. And it's quite difficult. And we ended up taking the approach of actually just recording all of these assets, UI elements, gameplay footage, everything we could, recording it onto old copies of Alien on VHS, and then playing that back through horrible VHS machines and curvy TVs, and filmed the results while I stood in a dark room and pulled apart machinery and put magnets on the side. And it's quite good fun to get paid to do that. And so this is an example of it there. So this is some video that came straight out of After Effects. This is a Seegson brand logo, untouched. This is what we got out of the computer. And there is some 70s kind of elements, the wobbly titles and the kind of yellowy brown color schemes, but it just feels too clean. It doesn't feel of that time. So next up we have the exact same clip. This is played through VHS with no extra work. And yeah, it looks the part. So it was pretty cool to do that stuff because, you spend a lot of time trying to work out a style and you get to that and you look back at the footage and you think, wow, this looks awful. We've nailed it. It's perfect. So that's a kind of glimpse of what the kind of style of that is going to be. So I'm going to pass you over to Gary now. He'll talk more about what we put in that world.
Hello, my name's Gary, and I'm going to talk to you about the star of our show, and that's the alien. Now, when we first set out to create this alien, we knew we wanted to create the feeling of the alien from the first film. So just the one lone alien, the huge creature that's on you, and that constant feeling of fear. So naturally, we went straight to our source material, the first film. So if you ask, anyone from the audience, you say, what's the alien like? They tell you things like, oh, he's very fast, he's agile, he's a killer, he's intelligent and devious, he's a very skilled hunter, stealthy and patient, pure of purpose. This really unpredictable feeling creature, almost omnipresent. And button. Sorry. And we looked at the original source material to say, okay, let's find examples of all these things that people have seen. So I'm just going to show you a quick glimpse of what we looked at when we looked at the alien from the first film.
Move! Get out of there! Would you move? Dad! Move, Dad! Move, Dad! Get out! Dallas?
Jazz hands. Turns out we couldn't actually find any good examples in that film of the alien doing any sorts of this stuff. And the list of, the characteristics we got were he stays still quite a lot. He hides, he's rarely seen, he sleeps, he grabs people when they back into him, and he's lazy. Well, obviously that wasn't the creature we wanted to create, so we had to look at and think of actually what we wanted to do was make what people think the alien is like. And we knew that we were portraying just like they did in the original film. They had very little to work with a guy in a rubber suit, but they managed to create this creature that did feel absolutely terrifying. So our approach, first of all, was behavioral design. We wanted a non-scripted alien because we knew you were going to die a lot. It was going to be this horrendously effective creature. If you died a lot, then it could become predictable. There would be not much replay valuable if every time you died, he did the same thing, everything again. And also, when you learn the pattern of something, you get more information than he has, so you feel like you have one up on him, and we never wanted that to occur. So we needed to build a systematic, non-scripted alien And the way we did it with the work of our programmers and the AI team, they developed a sense-based creature that would react to light in the world, it would react to movement, and also it would sense sound and perceive that in certain ways. We then needed behavior sets that would drive that in an intelligent way. And one way we thought about this was the idea of if we put any of you in an empty office you'd never been before and said, find the person that's hiding, you'd kind of wander around and explore. But if you heard something, you'd know it was roughly in that area. So we worked on that as the basis and built our behaviors from that. And then we also needed abilities. So we didn't want the player to just have nothing through the whole game and it just to be to hide and seek with this creature. So there's a crafting system in the game. You can develop things to help evade and defend yourself. But then we also needed the alien to be able to react and adapt to that. So the idea of this thing doing the same thing every time, we didn't want him to react to distractions in the same way as throwing a bone for a dog. So when the alien does adapt to these things and he reacts differently, it's really quite an experience for the player. And also communication. We learned pretty quickly that just having a deadly alien pound you to the ground and kill you wasn't actually that fun. So we needed to figure out a way of making this alien communicate to you. Now, unfortunately, we wanted, like the lo-fi sci-fi stuff. We didn't want to put any holograms in the world or exclamation marks or anything above the alien's head. So we didn't want a predictable alien that kind of, had an inward focus where you could tell what was going on. So my thing didn't ping. Oh, well. We can't put anything in the world because it doesn't feel like Alien is the short of it. So any audio cues, they weren't right because, it just felt like it was out of the ordinary. There we go. So we needed all the telegraphing to be done by the alien's animation, his movement, and the sounds he makes. So while he's prancing around the world and making big footsteps, he hisses and turns in your direction, you've done something. And that's a big thing because you're learning from the behavior of the creature and you're able to predict almost his behavior and his approach rather than any patterns. This also is very, very important for the animation team and the movement of the alien. So what looks believable? We could very quickly tell what was out of place because we know we want the alien to slowly search for you, but also wanting to feel like he can get straight to you. So first of all, putting the guy in the rubber suit from the film didn't work at all. When we get the alien running, we had comments like, he looks like an ice hockey player. That doesn't work either. And some of our slow, creepy alien, we had the long fingers, and it was very Nosferatu. But by being hard on ourselves and criticizing and making comics like this, we've been able to get the alien in the game and feel very, very fluid and very real. And we know that we put it in the environment and people look at it and go, yeah, actually, that does feel like it should be the alien from the first film. This is an example of him just raising up in part of our demo, and it really does just look like he should be there in the backdrop, and it could be just a wrong turn on the set in 1979. This is a short video that shows our debug tool of how we blend the alien's movements through his different animation layers. So here we can see the alien being manipulated by an animator in a test rig. They are changing things like his head layer, changing how fast he moves, changing his turning circle and his overall body animation through a series of over 70 animations that's blended through different layers. We've also got a very separate head layer because it's vital for gameplay when the alien is looking directly at you. And luckily, because of the design of Geiger's creature, when that massive head snaps and looks in your direction, he's seen you. So we learned some very interesting things from level design as well. When you can put the alien anywhere in the game, all of a sudden a dead-end corridor is the worst thing in the world. So all of our level designs had to support the fact that the alien could roam anywhere. He could appear anywhere. He could be behind the scenes, above the ceiling, below the floor, and you needed a way to be able to react to that and also feel like you had a chance to survive. So we had to make lots of alternate routes, and this is a big part of informing our level design. A lot of our level designs, they became about having multiple routes through a single area where you could, find him anywhere. And also preset events. We have a linear story in the game, so we need events to occur in certain locations, but where we can, we randomize them. And also we do the same thing with pickups. I think the people writing for this guide are going to be pretty angry at us, but I think it's worth it for gameplay. And we have vents, underfloor vents, side rooms, routes. So there's a lot of exploration in the game. Here's an example of one of the maps. This is actually the floor of the demo that you can play at the moment. And you can see we have lots of multiple routes through the area, so you're never really cornered. There's plenty of hiding spots and plenty of options for the player. So when we put this all together, it means that we have a believable and unpredictable alien. There's longevity in both the encounters and the abilities, because as you learn new things and craft things in the game, the alien adapts to it and changes its behavior. And the systematic behaviors mean that it is different every single time. Clear communication from the alien means you're not kind of caught out and you roughly know if you've done something wrong. And the player can learn the alien's intent, but not his pattern. Here's an example of how it looks in the final game.
Airlock pressurization, 75% complete. Airlock pressurization complete. Airlock opening. Stand by.
So that really just leaves. So thanks, guys. So that really just leaves me to the very lucky position to be able to exclusively reveal to you guys today that Alien Isolation will be available on Xbox One, Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, and PC from the 7th of October 2014. Thank you very much. So I think we have a little bit of time for questions, hopefully.
Yeah, that's right. If anyone has a question for these guys, just come up here and queue up and we'll get through as many as possible. And here's the first one.
Hi everyone. One of the key things in the first film that gives it that uneasy sense is all of the Freudian imagery. I mean, you look, there are just vaginas and penises absolutely everywhere. And even the alien is just essentially a massive wang. I wondered if you'd been able to explore that in this game, considering that games kind of tend to run away from anything to do with sex and that sort of stuff.
So is your question, have we explored wangs? No.
That's the short version, yeah.
So there's obviously a lot of that imagery just present in the world naturally because of Geiger's designs and how the alien does appear. Also, having a strong female character in that position with this penis head monster looking around, you can't really avoid that kind of thing. I think what we've concentrated on is that feeling of the creature and trying to avoid the creature more than any kind of sexual tension. But we have found it, present in the world. So I don't think it's something we've actively pursued, but it's definitely present within the game.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I've got to follow up from that now, so thanks a lot. As the first AAA horror game that seems to be inspired by some recent indie successes such as the Amnesia series, how are you planning to differentiate yourselves from games of that ilk? Also, can you comment on how difficult it was to get Sega on board with this title, as it seems like quite a risky venture for something in the AAA development sphere? Thank you.
So I think to answer your second question first, this all started because I think we've said it publicly before, but this is the Alien game that we wanted to play. I think there wasn't really this experience within the franchise, the video games in the franchise before, and so we were in a fortunate position. We put together a really small technical demo, which took about 4 weeks, and it incorporated elements from the first film. So we built the medical lab, and then we duplicated it and then trashed it. So that and it was interesting because it started out as a technical demo, but from day one it started becoming a mood piece. We started to really understand what we were trying to do, and so we had these two medical labs, one pristine, one destroyed, and instantly you started to think, okay, there's a story going on here. What's going on? And then the demo ended with this enormous alien revealing itself in front of the player, and I think it was. I mean, for us, that's okay. This is the kind of experience we want to create. And what was kind of great for us was every time we were able to show it to someone, they kind of went, "Can we have that, please? That looks really good." And I think it's because it was taking a new approach to something that people really love. And so I think for me, it was when we presented it to Fox, it was a different approach to their IP, to their franchise, but they were on board immediately, and so I don't know. I think there's actually quite a large audience for this type of game, and for this game in particular. I mean, the response we've got to the showing you all at EGX Rezzed has been absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, it's been right from the start. We've just stayed kind of true to what we were trying to do.
If I can cut in to answer your first question as well. Your question is like, how do we compare to stuff like Amnesia, and how do we address that kind of thing? We chose very specifically to show people a part of the game that was just you with no weapons, unable to defend yourself, no access to the crafting system, and just the alien's very cut down core behavior set, so people could adjust to the idea of like throwing away years and years of just gunning down aliens and actually going, okay, this thing's dangerous. So a natural product of that is people are like, how is this going to last 15 hours? It's like, well, we've done more. There's a lot more mechanics in the game, as I mentioned, about the alien learning, and there is devices. There are weapons you can find aboard. There's no pulse rifles or rocket launchers or any huge weaponry, but there is stuff that you can find to defend yourself. So I'd say the actual core gameplay is much, much deeper than the kind of just hide and seek from the creature.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Thanks for the release date reveal, by the way. Just two quick questions, which the same as I had for the last presentation. Have you considered VR support in this, or?
So I think we're in really exciting times as game developers. Things are always moving forward, and I think that's one of the kind of joys about our medium, about creating games at this time. And I think the simple answer is that we're always looking at. We're always exploring different technologies.
Thanks. And the last question is, will this be supported by SteamOS? Linux?
So at the moment, we're only really talking about the platforms that I mentioned. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Earlier on, you were talking about the abilities and being able to find tools and items and crafting and stuff. Can you talk any more about some of the abilities that you'll have or be able to employ in the game at all?
So, no. The reason is, right, there's a huge part of the game is actually the player learning from the alien. This has come up in a bit of press recently where people are saying, I would have liked to have discovered that for myself, but there's so much you can learn about the alien and how it behaves that, picking up, finding you can build something, and then seeing how it works is a lot of the discovery of the player. So there's a lot you can do, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, guys. You're great. Your game looks absolutely fantastic. I just wanted to say the design and filming stuff off an old CRT TV really made me quite excited. So good work with that. And also, it'd be really great if I give you my email address. Maybe you can send me that 3 terabyte file from Fox. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure.
So, as a huge fan of cinema as well as games. Nothing makes me worry more than when people announce games based on films, except possibly for people announcing films based on games, which might be worse. So it's really great to see people who obviously love the original and want to actually stay true to, Scott's original sort of whole aesthetic of the film. I'm sure this game's going to be a massive success. In an ideal world, if this really does really well, I know you're probably not even finished the game yet, but what would your ideal, perfect next film franchise be to do a little game version of?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We're really focused on finishing this game, and I think that's all we're really thinking about is
Ideal world, anything.
Ideally, we'll get this game finished.
Okay.
You want to do Greece, don't you?
Greece,
Yeah.
Greece, yeah.
with the alien.
Yeah, well,
I thought it would be really interesting to make a game of Alien 3 because it's the same sort of setting, and also I could think you could do a lot more with the kind of the big pistons and the environment and exploring that whole kind of setting. But that's just me. That's like all opinions of my own and not of Sega, etc.
Okay. Good luck with the game.
Thank you.
thanks.
Cool. Well, thanks very much, guys. And yeah, Alien Isolation. Give it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done.